Tom Moran from Tom's Big Spiders here, back with something a little bit different this time. We're going to move away from the tarantulas for a bit. We're going to talk a little bit about scorpions. Last year, I picked up a pair of emperor scorpions from Fear Not Tarantulas with the goal of breeding them. Well, it was a success. I've been waiting to holding on to some of this footage for quite a while so I could kind of put together a thing that showed the whole process from beginning to end. And I think I've got some pretty interesting things on it. So what we're going to do here is talk about how I set them up, how long it took, and some tips for keeping them after you get the little babies, because now there's a bunch of babies out there that are for sale. Hopefully some of you guys are picking them up, and I know there can be a lot of conflicting information on how to keep them. So enough of me talking, let's move on to the video. And here we've got the adult enclosures, about a 5-gallon size. Notice they put cork bark on both sides because the left side was the one that was heated. That one was around 85 degrees or so, a little bit higher at times. And the other side was unheated. And you want to give them a choice to temperature regulate. I dropped the adult female and the adult male in. At first, the female didn't want the male anywhere near her, but eventually they ended up in the same burrow. I did not witness the courting, unfortunately, but obviously it was a success. And you want to make sure you give them a choice of which side to go to, because they will move from one side to another. And a shallow water dish, and the piece of slate was because I read that the males will deposit their sperm on a hard surface and the female will go over it. They'll bring the female over it. So I put the piece of slate in there, and basically what I would do is periodically clean any dirt that was on it off to make sure that it was fresh. And apparently it worked, because she definitely was pregnant. So what happened is I dropped them in together in about November, early December, and then about January, February, I noticed that she didn't really want anything to do with the male anymore and was kind of driving him away, so I took him out, and then it was at that point that I started fattening her up. I noticed she was getting quite fat, so at first I was feeding crickets, then I moved to adult, full-grown dubia roaches, males and females. She was eating anywhere between 1 or 2 a week, and she was putting on a lot of size, and that's pretty much the feeding schedule I kept her on for the duration. And she obviously did quite well, put on a lot of size, and then ended up officially having the babies in July. So after being introduced to the male in around November, showing signs of being gravid around February, here she is emerging with all of those beautiful little pale beauties on her back. This was a huge thrill for me. I was so excited to get the opportunity to pair these guys, and to actually see it come to fruition and see her come out with all those babies on her back was just the highlight of my year so far as keeping is concerned. I was so afraid something was going to go wrong with her. I did have to change the substrate at one point, because it was the stuff that part of it was the stuff that I'd used that had been bad substrate, so I was afraid that was going to mess things up, because she was quite gravid when I had to move her. But there she is with all the babies, doing great, and she was an amazing mother. Here we see her about a week later, and during the whole pregnancy, she spent the majority of the time in the burrow. Now you see the burrow to the right is on the cool side of the tank. That one's about 80. The other side gets around 84, 85, and she would temperature regulate by going to one side or the other. So she literally had burrows kind of built on both sides. Eventually, she built a burrow that went from the right all the way down around the back of the enclosure around to the left, so she could just kind of regulate which side she went on without coming to the surface, and I thought that was really cool. But right here, I did not feed her during this period. I did a lot of research, and some people said that you should try to immediately feed her. Others said that they'll be very good mothers and they won't eat quite yet, because what they will do is feed their babies before they eat. So, and the other things I read was to keep the babies with them, because they're great mothers, and try to do anything, not do anything to upset them or freak them out. So I figure if I drag the cage down and tried to feed her during this point, I was afraid I might catch her eating one, and that is natural. If one of them falls off her back, they're normally not fit to live, so they'll eat them, consume them, and that'll give the mom some more energy. But as far as I could tell, that didn't happen. I counted what we had here was about 20, and we ended up with about 20, so I don't think that happened. And the part that blew my mind, here they are about 2 months later. I believe this was in August, or a month later in August. They have molted, and they are all feeding on one big dubia roach. I would kill a dubia roach, drop it in there. Mom would grab it and basically rip it up and let the babies eat. She was an amazing mother. This pained me to have to split these guys up, because this is one of the best mothering examples I've seen out of any of my creatures. And you can see here, they're all gathered around like pigs trying to get their mom's teat. I can't believe I just used that word here, but that's what it reminds me of, trying to eat that roach. And so basically I would drop in a roach every few days, and they would eat like this. And here we have the actual housing that I have to admit was a bit of a nightmare. I was dreading this for quite some time. Plus the fact that I hadn't seen the mother and the babies in a while. Basically what happened was after a couple catching them on eating on camera that time, they went deep down in the burrow. She had managed to make a huge burrow, which I will point to later on in this clip here. But what was happening was I wasn't catching any of the babies out. And then every once in a while I would catch one or maybe even two out. So I wasn't sure how many they had. I was really concerned that they weren't okay, only because when you can't check on things, it kind of worries you. But digging through this, you can see there were tunnels all over the place, and trying to figure out how to go at this was very, very difficult. I'm used to digging out tarantulas where you know pretty much where their burrow is and where they're going to be when you dig it up. With these guys, they were all over the bottom of this. So I had to be very, very careful while digging it up. We caught two of them while in molt, which was unfortunate. One of them molted fine, and I have it separately. We'll see in a minute, and it's totally okay. The other one, unfortunately, did not make it, so we only lost one of the bunch. But this was a rather long, painstaking process, which is why I don't have the entire thing here and only caught the tail end of it. I really needed to focus on trying to figure out where these guys were and not hurting any of them as I was trying to get them out. And a couple of them got a little nasty, which was adorable. I actually had a few of them stinging at me while I was trying to get them out of there, which I thought was cute. But as you can see, they were buried all the way. This would be the warm side of the aquarium that was closer to the heat source. The heat source was basically underneath it, so it was much warmer there, and that's where all the babies had congregated. However, the mother had a tunnel that went all the way up to the other side of the enclosure, and when I would drop prey in, I'd always put it over there. So she was taking it, and usually what I do is crush the roaches' heads. So mom was ended up killing them off completely, dragging them all the way into the burrow, and they would eat. And what amazed me was that there really wasn't much debris down there in the burrow when I dug it up. I found like a wing or two, but that was about it. And I did find that the mom was dragging some of the stuff out to the surface. And there we can see these little guys. I am not sure which instar these are. There were a couple different, you could tell that there were a couple different sizes here. I think the bigger ones are probably third to fourth instar, but that's only a guess. People that have raised them before might have a better idea, but you can see they are fat little boogers. They were eating very well. I was dropping in a roach twice a week for mom, and she wasn't eating any of it. She was taking the roach, ripping it apart, bringing it down the burrow, and these little guys were going at it. So you can see they were all very, very healthy, which points to the fact that they do very well when raised together. So if I were to do this again, without a doubt, I would leave the babies with the mother. She was an amazing parent, and I have to say, what you don't hear in the commentary here is a lot of me lamenting the fact that I had to finally break it up and get them out. I mean, the point was to get them out of here and eventually, move them off so other people could keep them. But this one bothered me a bit because mom really was a good mom. She stood her ground when I tried to get them out. She tried to keep me away from them. And, it's kind of sad to see. I love seeing good mothering in nature. And I would say the emperors are fantastic mothers. And I'm glad I kept them together because I got to witness this. Which, as we'll see in a moment, that I have a group of 5 that I kept together, and then one of the ones that was molting I put in its own enclosure, and that one's doing fine too. I may drop her or he or she back in with the other ones. But took a while, so be prepared if you try to breed these guys that getting the babies out can be a bit of an ordeal. If you give them, I mean, honestly, I think if you give them the correct size enclosure and give them some room to dig and burrow, which is the best thing for mom because it makes her feel more comfortable, she's going to do a better job mothering, then unfortunately the, con for that is that you're going to spend some time trying to dig them out. But we ended up, I think, total with 20. I'll have to double check, and the majority of which I think went to Tanya at Fear Not, so she will be selling those. So hopefully some people pick those guys up, and please feel free to let me know if you got some. I'll tell you how I'm keeping them in a minute. There they are, adorable little things. I mean, literally, I loved emperors before this. This just made me like them even more. Oh my lord, that's unfortunate. I'm really upset about that. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18.
Should we 19. Take that one out?
Yeah, I'm going to take him out.
He's moving.
He's moving, but he just molted. Alright, so it looks like 17 or 18. We had one that doesn't look in good shape, but I'm not sure if it's in the middle of the molt. That's the unfortunate part about digging these out, is you can't tell when they're molting. So I've been putting it off for exactly that reason. Plus the mother had tunnels. Look at this here. The tunnel started on this end, went underneath the cork bark, around the side, all the way around the front, down around here and around to this corner. So we found the last like 7 or 8 of them crammed in over here. So she really did an extensive amount of tunneling. And basically what she did is the heat source was over on this side. So as it got a little bit cooler in the tarantula room, she started moving over this way so she'd be closer to the heat. But I guess they're all doing really well. I'm guessing probably 3rd to 4th instars. It's hard to tell. I mean, I guess they put on quite a bit of size since I last saw them. So I'm guessing 2 or 3 molts in there. There they go. Cute little emperors. And here is the enclosure for the ones I am keeping for myself. There are 5 of them in here, and this is going to remain a communal setup. I do want to keep them together. And you can see I placed cork barks on both sides, several inches of moist substrate. Here I'm using cocoa fiber vermiculite mix, but topsoil would work, anything that you can keep moist. And right there is where their current den is. They dug all the way down. At one point they were down all the way to the bottom. And that's something to keep in mind, that emperor scorpions are burrowing species. A lot of times you see them in pet stores and they don't give them enough room to burrow, and I think people replicate that when they get them home, but generally they want to be able to burrow. So when setting them up, you definitely don't want to be a substrate Scrooge. A lot of nice moist substrate for them to dig in will be great. And because they will temperature regulate and you're going to have a warm side and a cool side, make sure that you have cork bark or some type of hide on both sides so that they can choose what they need at any given time. If you put all the cork bark on the warm side, they're probably going to tend to gravitate toward that more and not be able to move when they want to. So if you notice here, we have ones on both sides. Right now, they are currently burrowing beneath the ones on the warm side, so they seem to prefer that, but the option is there to move if they'd like. And because they were eating pre-killed before, what I've been doing is pre-killing a couple crickets, large crickets, ripping them up and kind of putting them by the burrow, and they've been eating those perfectly fine. And here's the enclosure for that one that was in molt. As I was taking it out, it actually molted in here afterwards. But you can see, unfortunately, top's a little hazy there, but I got a piece of cork bark for it. It is burrowed underneath the cork bark, and this one is also eating pre-killed. I pre-killed a roach and left it for it, and ate it no problem. So they are doing great right now. Can't wait to raise these guys up. I may go ahead and drop this one in with the other ones. I don't think there'll be an issue, and quite frankly, I just want to see the communal with 6 of them. All right, so hope you guys enjoyed that. Again, it's kind of a long process with breeding these guys because they can hold on to that sperm for quite some time. And I've heard cases of the females actually having their clutch up to a year or even further after being bred. So I was very fortunate that mine basically were bred somewhere around probably November, December, and then she went in July. So it was a pretty good distance between when she was bred and when she had them, but wasn't an incredibly long wait. And I'm glad because I was really freaking out about these guys. I had a gnat outbreak in between, and at one point made the decision to basically throw out all the substrate and clean it out. And she was quite gravid at this point, and I was really worried this was going to lead to some issues, but she was fine. She's been a fantastic mother, and I'll probably end up breeding her again, and this time just leaving the babies with her to see how it goes. And the babies are doing great so far. The 5 that are together are doing really well. The one that's by itself is growing really well. And I think what I'm going to probably do is put them together. So hopefully that answers some of the questions people have asked. I know there's been a lot of people interested on how this project went and how I keep them. And if there's any questions, obviously we have the comment section. So if this was your first time catching one of my videos, feel free to check out a couple more around here. And if you liked it so much that you'd like to subscribe, feel free to click the little button right up there. As always, thanks so much for watching. Hope to see some of you guys in the comment section.